There is something that the brain naturally just rejects anything that's new. It's new, blah. And of course, the kids are going to react. But when you know, hey, I'm getting better at teaching my child a small skill, that is enough motivation to keep you going. There is no handbook for parenting, and there's definitely no handbook for parenting with special needs. So if you have some good data, one bad day is just one bad day. And that's the importance of good data taking and how that can help you. Welcome to the Fight for 15-Minute podcast about motivation. In part one, we went over what motivation is and how crucial it is to get your child to learn those early child development skills. We also talked about how to engage your senses and really look at all the different ways that kids with autism, you can find ways to get them motivated to learn from their environment. Here in part two, we're really going to talk about practical skills so that you don't have to wait and be on wait list, but you can start today to really help build the motivation and different types of motivation for your child. So be prepared to fight for 15 minutes, enjoy the podcast and stay to the end. Stay empowered, stay informed, enjoy.
For parents who are listening say, oh my gosh, I think I screwed up. My kids do not want to come to me. My kids do not want to come to the table. And my kids think of me as, well, time to work, mommy. Like if for those parents who have the history of creating like such an environment for their, and a lot of us do that. Please don't think that there's something wrong with you. And if you are listening, and myself does that too, like Michael said, we tend to rush in because we want to teach our child skills and they can catch up. So for parents who kind of regretting some of this and then want to go back to create a positive environment for their child, and maybe the environment is associated with work, seriousness, no fun. In this case, what kind of advice do you have for those parents?
I love that question because, we're human and we learn on the fly. There is no handbook for parenting, and there's definitely no handbook for parenting with special needs. So the good news about motivation, you can always start to change the behavior. So even though you haven't established where it's not quite working out as you'd like it, you can definitely start to modify and change it into something that is more beneficial for you and your child. So I think it's thinking of not that I need to do a clean slate. It's just really thinking I want to shift what my focus is and really focus on opportunity. And so instead of getting so frustrated because my kid didn't learn something right away, I'm just focused on how many times did I teach it. And I'm rewarding myself and understanding I'm doing a good job because I presented material in a good way multiple times. And I think that's a great place to kind of shift your mindset. So that's kind of the first one. And then the second one is you're just looking for the small window. So this is why we like to take sometimes the simplest of data. And so instead of thinking of, hey, my child didn't learn Apple, what I want parents to focus on was how many times did they really focus and pay attention? How many times were I able to connect with them in the midst of these 15 minutes? And that is a positive because now you can start to track that. Where the first time I tried about for 15 minutes to engage with my child, and he only really paid attention twice. He ran away from me a couple of times, all these things happened. Okay, but he happened 2 times. And then now 2 weeks later, when I do my fight for 15 minutes, now we had about 10 different interactions. Some were longer, some were shorter. That's 5 times as many. And so that allows you to find an area that you actually have some control over because you're now being more creative on something you can control versus feeling frustrated on what you can't control. So find the data that keeps you motivated, and whether it's every day or every week. And I think you'll start to find your curiosity. Now, when your child starts to learn something, you know why they learned it. And it wasn't because of luck. It wasn't because of, all these other things. It's because you're starting to build a system of teaching. So start slow, 15 seconds to start, build up to 15 minutes, and see how far you and your kiddo get.
The key thing is make progress every day, not big progress, but small steps.
Yeah.
A follow-up question about the activity. Sometimes parents struggles with that, the rigidity some of our kids have, right? Like things have to be predictable, routine. If there's a change routine, there is a meltdown. Now, is there anything parents can do in terms of like visual support, the way they talk to their kids, can help the motivation, building that motivation, even when there's change in routine, things they cannot predict, like holiday is a good example, Thanksgiving, Christmas, we're not going to school anymore, we're not going to clinic during that time. And what can parents do? Continue to build that motivation.
I am a big fan of as many tools as possible. So you mentioned visual supports as one. So having certain pictures for important things, having a calm down area for a child that's heavy and sensory could be very important. But realize when you try some of these new things like teaching Apple, you might get a lot of pushback. You might get some aggression. You might get some things that just come out of the blue because when a brain is overstimulated, it's going to react in surprising ways. So what I think for parents is not to overreact even the first couple of times you present something, but give it a little bit of time. Unless a child's really engaging in some severe self-interest behavior or something that's really dangerous, I think is realizing is giving their brain a chance to process that this is not a threat, this is not harmful, but something that they can learn takes a little bit of time. So the analogy that I like to use is we've all had kind of a pop song that first comes on the radio that we absolutely hate. It's dumb, it's kind of this playful jingle, and it just plays, the first time, but that thing's on the radio constantly. So 2 days later, you at least like the hook. Okay, the hook's a little interesting. And then 4 days later, you like this one phrase in the second verse. And then 2 weeks from when you hated it, now it's your favorite song. So there is something that the brain naturally just rejects anything that's new. It's new, blah, and of course the kids are gonna react. But just the same way how a pop song that you hate now becomes your favorite song, if you could be consistent and not overreact too much when your child has an overreaction, you can start to wean in things like food. You can start to get things in like teaching some simple skills, especially for things that the kids want. So I really think for parents is not to let one bad day derail your system. And I think that's why we talk to parents about systems. One great day or one bad day doesn't change everything. It's just watching for the trend lines is important. Are you trending in the right direction? Lets you know the system is growing and being stable. And if you're not trending in the right direction, it helps you to know that your system needs to be adjusted.
Yeah, I can totally see one day almost make you forget about all the three other good days you have. All you can think of is a bad day.
Yeah. So that's what we're trying to avoid is we help parents build systems so that one bad day doesn't derail from really helping their child make progress.
Instead of focusing on that kind of negative emotion, focusing on the system you have. Have I thought about the multisensory needs of my child? Have I incorporated different materials that take advantage of my child's sensory preference? So we have talked about system, we have talked about different ways to make teaching fun and how to be creative. Now, our last part of a podcast, like I want to talk to you about the practices keep motivation flowing. And I think there was a time when we talk about motivation, we talk about it's really like the physical exercise, like your muscle, you are practicing exercise, you're jogging, and that's how you keep building your muscle. And motivation is very similar to that. It's not something you build once, it's a daily practice. So, what are some like simple practices parents can start building their motivation muscle?
We are the biggest believers. All these kind of concepts we're trying to build. So concepts of motivation, contingent access, receptive, all of these things is to internalize them. So I really think the first step for a parent is really understand how you are motivated. So we just talked about this whole way of different sensory. I think it'd be good for a parent to reflect on what type of ways am I motivated? Is it I love listening to music? Is that helps to calm and regulate me? Am I excited by visuals? Do I better when I'm out being physical? So we're big fans that we're not teaching, we're teaching you a concept, but we're teaching you the concept for you to master in your own journey so that is easier for you to then teach your child. So I think that's the biggest way to look at this. When we start to think of these things, first think about your motivation. And I think that will be the fastest route because it goes back to we're just rushing so much to try to catch our kids up, and just taking that step back and go, well, how am I motivated? And the more you start to unlock how you're motivated, I think now when you watch your kid, you can start to see the details of, both of us are motivated by physical play. We should go do more physical play activities together. So now you're trying to find that Venn diagram where the mom and child will do yoga together and kind of go into that process. Or they'll just go out in the back and put their hands in the dirt while one's gardening and this one has their hands in the dirt, but they're both connecting that way and kind of sharing in that energy. And so to best help your child, it's through your understanding of the concept is my best advice.
So the focus is not just the child, but also yourself and take care of
Yes.
your own motivation.
Yes, because it's all about what you can control. And I think as humans, when we feel we don't have control, we're demotivated in the process. But when you know, hey, I'm getting better at teaching my child a small skill, that is enough motivation to keep you going. And that is what the energy is needed for a child with special needs to kind of start to catch up and learn those crucial skills.
And a lot of this require parents kind of be the almost like scientists. You're observe what a child is doing, you are assessing the level of engagement, and then, oh yeah, he loved the gardening, that the dirt. Let's try the gardening. Let's try different activity that with dirt and plant something together. So how can parents even keep track of all this data?
So this is where it is simple data. So one example, and we do provide a couple of small worksheets for our parents, is just think about the sensory. So today, sensory was tactile, meaning we used our hands, dug in the dirt. And then we noticed that the child had a lot of excitement. So we just had kind of a quick scale, 1 through 5. We play with dirt. He had a 5, and then now that gives you some insight. And so by taking just a little bit of data on kind of the rating scale of the child's place and what you did, now you can see after a couple of weeks what could be possible. So I think that's one simple way. And the other one's just a simple tally mark. In 15 minutes, how many times did I make my kid giggle? In 15 minutes, how many times did I at least present Apple in a good way? I think also is a good way for you to chart progress. So there's either tally progress, or you can just create a little scale of a sensory side or something you taught and kind of see if that is getting better over time.
Yeah. And I think parents have to tailor that to their own style. Some of us love carrying the planner, the paper planner around, and some of us couldn't even find the planner. And some of us love the Google Keep or the Gmail calendar. And I think parents just have to figure out your way, your own way of tracking, maybe on your phone. I can see some parents put the tallies on their hand because they can find a piece of paper in the chaos. That whatever environment that works for your family, I think that piece is very, very important.
Yes, do whatever it is, as long as it's consistent and you can go back to it, then that's all that matters in the early phases. And then over time, you'll know what's the best way to keep simple data. You don't have to write a whole library, but the data is important so you can know what is objective of what's taking place versus how you feel. And I think that's where parents get demotivated. One bad day is easy to be demotivated because you can't refer back to the good day. But if you have some good data, one bad day is just one bad day. And that's the importance of good data taking and how that can help you.
And I think writing down one small win each day as a short journal entry. But on those hard days, you are saying parents can go back, flip through the page like, actually, was not this bad. And we did this together. And we have learned so much together. And one bad day, that really helped parents put things into perspective.
It does. And so a lot of times when we're coaching, we'll have that. So I get on the call and the mom's like, everything's wrong, everything's terrible. And, it's like the doom cloud has kind of risen in the coaching session. And one of the first things we do is say, okay, well, what things stood out that week? And what do we slowly do is like, oh, yeah, we got better with potty training this week. And, we normally fight for sleep, but actually 3 of the nights, he slept no problem. And as the parents start to talk about the things that actually went well or refer back to their data, you can just see the rain cloud just slowly like pushing through, like the wind going through. And the parents like, oh, okay, it was just one bad day, or I could have did this better. And now they get back to being taking action. And so that's what it is the data helps you to stay in action mode versus demotivated, frustrated, all the things or negative feedback loop, blame. That's what data does to you. Just kind of pushes the storm clouds away so you can focus on what's really important.
To wrap up, I was wondering whether you can share an example with us. Of all the parents you have worked with in the past, 20 some years, and currently, can you think of a parent that actually come to your mind who was very discouraged and after having a system in place, after start tracking the data, and see the positivity and goes from a negative loop to a positive loop and really the change of energy and has built successfully their motivation muscle.
The example that pops in my head is really thinking about when a new kid, of course, when I used to have a therapy center, so a kid starts fresh, brand new. And the first week or two is kind of challenging. We're a new environment, all these things taking place. So in those early conversations with mom, it's just thinking too much about the future 3 to 5 years from now. Is my kid going to be able to make it into kindergarten successfully? Are they going to go to middle school? And so I think there was so much dread over the uncertainty of the future. So what we really try to do is focus on things that we can do now in the present. And so it was a lot of, hey, we're teaching these 3 things that your child likes. Here's some things to work on at home. And in this in particular, this one that we'll teach at the center, but this particular one, I can't remember the exact thing that the child liked, but this one you can teach on your own. And so when they came back, we would just kind of talk about how that one thing went. I think there's like a food item. There's like chips or something like that. And so at first, still talking about the uncertain future, we kept refocusing on the present. Hey, just try to work on chips, be creative with the chip. And then one day, all of a sudden it came in and you can see the look on her face, right? Because it was like, I got better with teaching chips. He said for the first time. And just the mind shift. And so before where she'd come in with the rain cloud to begin the conversation, now the switch hit on, oh, I can teach my child something. And it wasn't that we didn't teach. So we purposely made sure that we had things that we taught. We had one thing specifically that was just for the family to teach. And once the light went on that, oh, hey, I can teach something, now the parent was proactive. So she would start to bring suggestions. She said, hey, I tried this yesterday. And so to me, that's a switch of now I'm in experimentation mode. I don't view every time I do something as success or failure. I view it as an experiment that helps me learn about my system. And after that, she was off to the races. And so, and of course, that kid started to make progress. And it was a mixture of having good therapy, but it was more that mom figured out a way to keep her motivation in the process because A, she had some success, because she had some early success. And then B, she realized that she can control this part of it. She can't control what's going to happen in the next 2, 5, 10 years, but she can control working on teaching chips today. And to me, that is where that shift can take place. And that's where really success is made.
That is such a beautiful story. Thanks for sharing that. So that brings us to the end of today's episode. Thanks, parents, for joining us today. Remember, motivation is everything. Before you start teaching, you should think about, is your child motivated? Is your child in the right state to start learn those things? By focusing on small wins, by focusing on system, and using playful strategy, and keep simple data. Keep a journal or keep tallies so that you know what to look for when you are in a tough spot. And it's okay to have a one tough day. We all have tough days. And look through the data, look through the journal, find those glimmers, find those hopeful moments you have had with your child. If you find today's episode helpful, make sure to share with other people and other parents who may have the same struggle and need boost of motivation. And don't forget to hit subscribe so you'll never miss an episode. And remember, you got this. It's hard, but you don't have to walk this journey on your own. And welcome to our tribe, Parent Empowerment Coaching Tribe. Be empowered and be informed. And we'll talk to you soon.